curses, mysterious incidents, or true magic. No matter the perception or belief of curses, they always have one major outcome: attraction and attention. The curse that surrounded the discovery of King Tutankhamen's tomb amplified the triumphant discovery and brought forth a series of tragedies that would send the world into a fantastic frenzy about King Tutankhamun and the mysterious Egyptian culture. Europeans and other Western countries have always had a fascination with mysterious cultures and religions that were different from their own. For centuries, Western powers have invaded these mysterious, exotic cultures because of pure fascination and hopes of conquest. From the fascination with the Mayans and the Incas to the Native Americans, these invasions became a trend. Along with these fascinations came the rise of Western-led archaeology. This trend led to the British invasion of Egypt and ultimately to one of the largest archaeological finds in the world, the discovery of King Tutankhamen's tomb. The triumph of the discovery of King Tutankhamen's tomb caused an expansion of the world's knowledge of ancient Egypt and piqued the interest in Egyptology. The tragedy of the so-called curse caused an increase in the mystique surrounding the tomb, and the tensions that arose between England and Egypt brought forth decades of suppressed conflict between the two countries. King Tutankhamun, an Egyptian pharaoh during the New Kingdom era, ruled over Egypt for a total of 9 years, which was a period of great significance for Egyptian society. He rose to power around the young age of 10 and was killed around the age of 20, ending his reign over Egypt. When a pharaoh or important member of society died, a large part of the Egyptian culture and religion was the creation of large tombs in the hopes of assisting them in the afterlife. The Valley of the Kings was a common burial ground in ancient Egypt. It was used by all but one of the monarchs of the New Kingdom era. The location was chosen because of the protection provided by the mountains and natural landmarks around the valley, and symbolized a strong sense of security in Egypt. They believed once a person died that their soul would leave their body and require possessions on their journey to the afterlife. The valley remained mostly untouched. However, people soon began venturing into the valley. Howard Carter was a British archaeologist who was appointed head of the Egyptian Antiquities Service in 1899. He served as their head inspector for the southern part of Egypt, which included the Valley of the Kings. Carter's search for the tomb of King Tutankhamun originated from his theory that there was one royal tomb that had not yet been discovered. Howard Carter was introduced to Lord Carnarvon in 1907. Lord Carnarvon became the perfect ingredient in Carter's search for the tomb. Carnarvon reached out to Carter for professional assistance in his triumphant search for King Tutankhamen's tomb. Carnarvon supported Carter's search financially and provided all the money necessary for equipment and workers. Head archaeologist Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon triumphantly discovered King Tutankhamen's tomb on November 4, 1922, in the Valley of the Kings in Luxor, Egypt. Howard Carter wrote, "At last I have made a wonderful discovery. In the valley laid a magnificent tomb with seal intact, recovered just the same for your arrival. Congratulations." When Carter and his team were finally able to enter the tomb, they found that it contained passageways to 4 different chambers. The chambers included the burial chamber, the treasury, the antechamber, and the annex. The burial chamber was the grandest of all the chambers. This chamber contained the mummy of King Tutankhamun. The walls of the chamber were decorated with vibrant yellows, and paintings of Tutankhamun covered the walls. The antechamber is the first chamber seen when walking into the tomb. All other chambers can be accessed through the antechamber. The antechamber was filled with large couches, stools, beds, baskets, chests, etc. The antechamber is said to hold at least 700 artifacts in the one single room. It took Carter and his team 7 weeks to just clear the antechamber. The treasury room could be accessed from the burial chamber, and it contained shrines, chests, boats, jars, and the bodies of 2 of King Tutankhamun's stillborn daughters. The annex was the smallest room in the tomb. It contained items such as pots, food, wine, stools, and baskets. The team ran into tragedy when it came to moving the artifacts out of the tomb. They struggled with dismantling shrines and moving them throughout the different chambers and out of the tomb. However, Carter and his team were eventually able to transport all of the artifacts out of the tomb and into secure locations where they could be protected and restored. The items would remain in these locations until it was decided upon where they would be displayed or stored permanently. After news of the discovery spread throughout the world, people from all over began traveling to Egypt to try and get a look at King Tutankhamen's tomb. Newspaper headlines around the world focused on the discovery of the tomb. Howard Carter, Lord Carnarvon, and the rest of the archaeological team were all thrown into the spotlight when the discovery became worldwide news. Newspapers, magazines, and news sources all pursued Lord Carnarvon and Howard Carter for special information regarding the discovery. The discovery of the tomb was triumphant because it provided people from all over the world opportunities to witness artifacts of one of Egypt's greatest time periods in person through museums and traveling exhibits. This triumph not only sparked popular interest in Egyptology, but also brought many tourists to Egypt. Although visitors were not allowed inside the tomb, that did not stop them from waiting outside the tomb to watch the archaeologists transport the artifacts out. The many tourists attracted by the tomb caused an economic boom for the country by profiting off of tourists viewing the tomb and spending money.
The tragedy of the discovery of King Tutankhamen's tomb was the false curse and hysteria that surrounded it. The legend said that death would come to anyone who disturbed the tomb of the dead pharaoh. Hysteria arose when the main benefactor, Lord Carnarvon, became deathly ill from an infected mosquito bite on his cheek. Within a few days, infection set in and had spread to his entire body, and he died shortly afterwards. Newspapers and journalists wrote of his death and did their best to exaggerate, encourage, and spread the idea of a curse to sell papers. The media amplified the mysterious deaths, creating the tragedy of a negative stigma around Egyptology. Of the news sources, the ones that were being viewed by people all over the world were mostly written and published by British sources. Therefore, the British were getting to tell the story of the discovery and the aftermath of it, leaving the Egyptian perspectives in the dark. In the media, British sources painted themselves as the main contributors for the find, leaving out the hard work of Egyptian workers and archaeologists. They also neglected the side of the story that included the effects this widely known discovery had on Egyptian people, such as the belief that ancient Egyptians were more technologically advanced than the current ones because of the advances in math and science, like the pyramids. After the British newspapers published articles on the curse, further hysteria arose, provoking many reactions of fear. All over England, collectors began to send back their Egyptian artifacts to the British Museum in an attempt to rid themselves of the curse and the possible repercussions. When it came to deciding upon the artifacts' permanent locations, true tragedy arose between England and Egypt. Great Britain had occupied Egypt for decades, beginning with the scramble for the Suez Canal. They strongly encouraged the build of the canal because of the trade opportunities and tax revenue that would be gained. The British conquest of Egypt was an imperial land grab that was the beginning of the conflicts between the two countries, which would re-emerge after the discovery of the tomb. Tragically, both countries wanted possession of the artifacts within the tomb and the tomb itself. It was unclear who the artifacts belonged to because they were on Egyptian land, but the land was recently controlled by England, as well as discovered by an English archaeological team. After multiple lawsuits, the Egyptian government, thanks to Zahi Hawass, an Egyptian archaeologist and former Egyptian minister of antiquities, won the right to the possessions of the artifacts. More than 60 years later, more disputes between the English and Egyptian governments emerged after it was found that Lord Carnarvon kept around 300 junk artifacts without the Egyptian government's knowledge. This furthered the damage between the two countries. The conflicts between Egypt and England proved to be just another factor that contributed to the popularity surrounding the discovery of the tomb. The discovery of the tomb was not just a triumph because it was discovered, but also because it affected the world's views on ancient Egypt and Egyptian culture. After the discovery, there was an increase of curiosity and interest of people in Egyptian culture. The period King Tutanchamun ruled, the Egyptian 14th century BCE, had been lost in history before the tomb was discovered. The artifacts within the tomb were a triumphant discovery because they told the world more about the events that occurred during King Tutanchamun's reign through art and poetry. Sandstone blocks line the walls of part of the tomb and picture religious offerings and rituals. Through these blocks, historians were able to learn that King Tutanchamun had been the first pharaoh to begin reversing the religious changes made by his father Akhenaten and begin worshipping the god Amun. During the 17-year reign of Akhenaten, Egypt experienced a religious revolution that included the establishment of a new capital city, ruinous disregard for foreign policy, and overall radical religious change. The triumph of the information gained from the tomb not only advanced the world knowledge of the once mysterious King Tutanchamun, but also the knowledge of ancient Egyptian culture in general. The discovery of King Tutanchamun's tomb and years to come would prove to be one of the world's greatest archaeological finds because of the everlasting triumph and tragedies it brought to the world.